Okay, a few stragglers coming in. There probably are a few seats around. So, welcome. If you're looking for the panel discussion on algorithms, social media, and the polarization effect, you're in the right place. So my name is Bill Schnorr. I'm a partner with a global law firm called Goodwin. I think we've got a very timely topic to address today, so let us launch in because we don't have that much time. I'm going to introduce the panel first. From the far end, Mark Halperin, who's the editor-in-chief of Two-Way Interactive and the host of Next Up. Then we have Devin Warwick McDonald, who is the co-founder of Second Harvest and a partner with OpenView Ventures. We then have Mike Pell. Mike is an Envisioneer and Senior Director of the Microsoft Garage in New York. Then we have Natalie Mombiot, who is the founder of Virtual Human Economy, which sounds intriguing. I'm sure we'll hear more about that. And then Mahesh Guruswamy, who's the CEO of Kajabi and the author of How to Deliver Bad News. But our goal here is not to deliver bad news, hopefully offer some good news.
Maybe.
So just to set the stage we're all living in a world of technology, from algorithmic feeds to large language models. These platforms that affect how we discover, communicate, and collaborate are evolving at a very rapid pace. And we're all having a hard time keeping up. Now, these tools do hold real promise, such as lowering barriers to building community, accelerating innovation, democratizing access to information. However, it's all clear to us that these digital technologies, which can connect us, can also force us into echo chambers, exaggerate and amplify divisions, and narrow the range of ideas we're exposed to. So this panel here today brings together leaders spanning journalism, venture capital, product leadership, virtual human design. Like I said, that's interesting. We're going to hear more about that. And enterprise technology to explore this tension at the heart of our digital infrastructure. When do algorithms and technologies foster creativity and connection? And when do they increase polarization and divide us? So without any further ado, we're going to launch right in. So each panelist here occupies a somewhat different position at the intersection of technology and human behavior. So I'm going to ask each of you, starting with Mark at the far end, in just a couple of sentences, say what's the most important thing you think our audience should understand about how technology, algorithms, and AI are reshaping the way people form opinions and connect with each other and build community.
Okay. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for
And
including
I'm not going to strictly hold you to a couple sentences.
Okay. Semicolons.
Yeah.
The biggest thing for me is the case study of social media and the failure of our society to grapple with it, from its effects on children to the ability of the Chinese and other foreign powers to manipulate our society, to the inability of government to have a clue about how to deal with it, to the mixed feelings about the private sector, which largely pretends to care about society but really is just for making money, and the extreme power of the algorithms to affect everybody. Take that and now multiply it by an unfathomable number to deal with what AI is going to do. And I think the only way, it's great to study it, it's great to talk about what a problem it is, what a threat it is, but I think the only way to do it is to have multidisciplinary attempt to try to deal with it. If the six of us could be cloned and we built a war room and the six clones worked it, we're interdisciplinary, we could do it. The challenge for society is that I know a little bit about some of this, but the only way to deal with this effectively, to keep the societal damage from being extreme, is to have a lot of people who know a lot about it. But it's very difficult because there are things I know about how the algorithms deal with journalism that no one else on the panel knows, but I can't understand the stuff that they understand. So my big message is we are not dealing with it. It's not even close. There's nothing commensurate in the trying to grapple with it in terms of the power of the, not just the technology, but the profit motive of those who are about to make a lot of money. And I hope somebody builds that war room.
Thanks, Mark. David?
All right. Tough act to follow there. I'm going to take a slightly more optimistic spin on things. So my background, as you mentioned, is in venture capital. At OpenView, we invested in all B2B software companies at the expansion stage. So pretty early on in their life cycle, we would typically lead Series A, Series B. And in my most recent years, I've actually started a new venture called Second Harvest, which is all about helping people at midlife with, figuring out what their next chapter is going to look like. And I guess the tone that I'm going to take with my comments today is there are certainly lots of things to be worried about when it comes to AI, and there are a lot of things that we need to get right for all of humanity and society. But I'm honestly really excited about the opportunity to allow for AI to allow us to be more human. I think that where there's so much noise and there's so much happening on the internet right now, there's on social media, it's like you're just swimming in information. And what's going to cut through in this situation is going to be human beings' connection and trust. So I think that there is a big opportunity there for some pretty amazing things to happen.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Devin. I'm going to try to build on what you just said and be a little more optimistic. Mark, thank you. We all needed that, and it's true. I don't disagree. My name is Mike Pell. I run the Microsoft Garage in New York City, which is Microsoft's global innovation program. So I deal with a lot of new technologies, a lot of very interesting initiatives. What I'm going to say to all of you as far as what I think is the most important thing to understand right now is, yes, the algorithms act in very particular ways. They can be fine-tuned to sell you things, to betray us, to do lots of things. But you are the back channel. You are the mechanism by which these algorithms can be tuned, the companies can be held accountable, and we can have a conversation about what's really happening. Don't be passive. Hit the button that says, I have something to say about this answer. Why are you saying that? What's going on here? Ask questions. Be an active participant in feeding back to the companies and the systems and the things that are in front of us. Don't sit there and let it happen. Right? You are part of all this. We all are.
Thank you. I am cautiously optimistic. I'm optimistic if we put the effort in. So Natalie Monbiot, founder of Virtual Human Economy. And so a little bit of background. I co-founded one of the early AI avatar startups in 2019. And ever since then have been very focused on AI-human collaboration and how we can create virtual or AI versions of ourselves to empower us. And I think that was 2019, pre-ChatGPT, and the world and AI and everything has become a lot more complex than that. But I still really believe that AI can be used to deliver more human agency if that's the way that we use it. One of my key concerns is the way in which we use AI, and we're kind of like encouraged to use AI in the way that we have been with social media platforms and all the algorithmic platforms that we're all very familiar with, which is that it jumps in with the answer for you, it jumps in with the opinion and the bias for you. And what's more concerning about AI and, is how it can actually influence the origins of your thoughts. So if you don't come to it with your own point of view and having done the thinking yourself, and I think that this benefits the older ones amongst us who have actually, spent decades honing our point of view, but for more vulnerable populations like younger people who are still forming their points of view, to use AI to do that actually, well, the research shows narrows creativity, narrows differentiation, narrows the sort of realm of ideas that exist in a person and therefore in the world at a time where we need more ideas because we do need to shape AI in a way that is very intentional. Otherwise, I have strong concerns that it will shape us.
Hey, all. My name is Mahesh. I'm going to build on top of what everybody else has been talking about. So I've been a tech executive for the last 10 years. So my job has been to remove obstacles from the way of capitalism, right? But now I am coming to the realization that unfettered capitalism is somewhat problematic. And we've seen this with the rise of, polarizing algorithms, polarizing AI. So I think two things. Like one is, the companies that I work for, my goal is to create a safe space for human creativity. I don't think that's going to go away anywhere. I don't think we should let it go anywhere. I think we should preserve it, we should nurture it, we should create a safe space for it. When it comes to AI and algorithms, et cetera, I think it is the right time for companies to bring back strong corporate values. Like, what do they hold true? What is a backstop for capitalism? Because if we let it unfettered, it will find the path to least resistance and try to make as much money as possible off of all of us. So So it is, I think it's the right time for, I think as you said, like for this group or people like this to get together and figure out what is the backstop to everything that's happening. And it is happening very, very quickly. If we don't get ahead of it, next year it'll be unrecognizable. So two things I would say, just to recap. One, we have to create a safe space for human creativity. I think that shouldn't go anywhere. And two, it's time to bring back strong corporate values so that it acts as a backstop for companies who have to decide, do we let the sugar in front of the population or not?
Okay, so that's a great way to get us going. I now want to maybe come back to the optimists in the group, Devin and Mike, with a couple of follow-ups before we dig into maybe the darker side of things. So Devin, you've invested in platforms at scale. Where have you seen social media or AI-driven tools genuinely unlock innovation or community that would not have existed otherwise? And what was it about those cases that made it work?
So we, as I mentioned before, invested in enterprise software, B2B software, and I would say that social media as a go-to-market strategy for that type of business as opposed to like a B2C company is slightly different. But what I will say is that I want to focus on the social element of it, because the companies that were able to sell to enterprises that almost had this sort of social effect within businesses and to bring together different business units. So I'm going to take an example of Datadog, one of our most successful companies to date. We had invested in them when they were $3 million in ARR and owned a pretty sizable chunk of the business, leading their Series B. And one of the things that made them, I think, most successful is their ability to get into an organization, usually through the engineering or engineering ops department. And, you'd start to see different business units start to plug in and start to connect and start to engage. And this became like a real center of trust. And I think that's a big word here, trust within these organizations. So social media, I think the businesses that do it right are focusing on this element of trust. And back to my point earlier, those who are, I think, going to be most successful in the future are going to be more human and sort of bring on more trust. I will say one quick thing too. When it comes to social media for the businesses we're investing as like a key strategy, I actually have seen that start to become less and less a talking point in conversations when we're chatting with heads of sales and CEOs and VPs of marketing. They are so much more focused on the in-person human experiences. Rather than investing so much in like these specialists in marketing, they're investing more in field sales reps and people who are going to be out building relationships with customers and hosting events. And so I think is something worth paying attention to.
Great, thank you. And Mike, for you, the Microsoft Garage is essentially an engine for experimental thinking. So how are you seeing generative AI and algorithmic tools expand creative possibility and open up doors and channels that otherwise wouldn't have been opened?
So I think many of us in this room have been part of teams or groups at school where you've had to do something very quickly, very creatively. And it's hard, right? It's hard to get your ideas together so quickly to come up with something that you think is actually good. What generative AI and the new AI systems have done for innovation is they've sped up the process, not of getting to great ideas necessarily, but just of having certain ideas that you would have never had otherwise. You just wouldn't have known. There would have been no way for you to do all the research in a reasonable amount of time to figure this out. I can say, hey, Copilot, what's the next biggest thing in this particular market, and what can I do to be different? And it will give you a pretty reasonable answer to start from, some ideas that you probably didn't think of. And so for us, that has been speeding up the actual innovation process tremendously. It is excruciating to put a bunch of people in a room. I love doing this, but it's really tough, right? And to come up with an agreement, how do we do this? How do we wordsmith? Now, at least we have a tool to help us go a bit faster and to maybe have ideas we wouldn't necessarily have had otherwise. Also, I've been working with universities in the New York area to sort of counter what I believe is called the answer machine. You ask an AI system something, it gives you an answer right away. We're looking at actually putting friction back into the system to sort of spark this kind of human interaction and creativity. We all have our best ideas because someone questioned what we were doing, and we had to think about ways to defend it or to get allies, right? To have people to jump in. This kind of conversation back and forth thing is really not present in today's systems, but the creativity that will come with that, I think, will be priceless, to be able to put the friction of people talking back into the answer machine.
Mind if I just add to that? So this goes into some of the work that I'm doing now, which is developing AI twins for executives within organizations. And it was interesting as we sort of started out thinking, oh, we want to take this executive's knowledge and personality and kind of like, well, how would they answer the question, and like be able to kind of create that connection point to a much broader group of people within the company that would never have access to this chief executive or senior leader. And so, but then kind of working through it and talking to people and, you know, top coaches and things like, no, we don't want more people to be told the answer, right? We want more people to understand the culture of the company, which hopefully is about challenging people, individuals, to come up with their own answers. So we, you know, in one example, designed an AI twin for a healthcare executive, and it has a lot of his persona in it, his personality, transcripts, calls, everything, but also has his kind of way of teaching and the culture that he wants to disseminate through the company, which is to think for yourself. And so you can kind of use this tool, his twin, in chat, you know, in voice, in avatar mode as needed, to actually converse with, but actually the answer is put on you. The agency is put on you to actually think about what you think and what you want to do and what makes sense. And that goes back to kind of putting some more friction back into the process using AI.
Thanks, Natalie. So Mark, coming back to you, and this again is maybe on the darker side. You've spent decades in political journalism and now run an interactive media platform. How has, you know, the emergence of the algorithmic layer and kind of the loss of the traditional gatekeepers around news and information changed the way political information reaches people? And do you think most audiences are aware of the degree to which they are being shaped and affected without their awareness of it?
Here's the secret surprise O. Henry twist. I'm actually extremely optimistic because of my own company. It's called Two Way. It's been around for about a year and a half. In the midst of just extended our Series A, and we're trying to solve for what I've seen my whole career, which is we had 3 straight 2-term presidents, Clinton, Bush, and Obama. Couldn't ask for 3 people more dedicated to ending polarization as part of their careers before they ran for president and then in the presidency. And each one left office with the country more polarized than before, not because they didn't try, but because they're up against the algorithms, digital media, and then social media. So what Two Way is about is to try to create authentic communities around conversations that don't exist very much in media. Because the algorithms, because of the changes in the journalism marketplace, most political media is intended to inspire the far left or the far right. That's how they make their money. What Two Way is about is not just for the moderates, centrists, and independents, although we welcome them. We want everybody on one platform having conversations where you can say what you think, and if someone disagrees with you, if a liberal goes on Fox News or a conservative goes on MS Now and they say something that's antithetical to the beliefs of that tribe, they get pummeled with messages saying, oh, you're stupid, I don't care what you think. On our platform, what we say is, you speak for tens of millions. You overcome the algorithm because now you're in an environment where the profit is based on people wanting that. And the data suggests that's what people want. The vast majority of Americans want to learn what other people think. We're trying to create a business model that we can make money, but we can also do a lot of good for society to try to circuit break on this problem, which is how do you create media that people on the far left, the far right, and the center all want? And we're doing okay. We aspire to be a lot bigger, obviously. We aspire to go into this presidential campaign, first the midterms and then the presidential, with creating conversation. We call our tagline is conversations like no other. I do 2 shows a day. Did one earlier today. I'll do one later today. And that's what it's about. And crazily, it doesn't really exist very much in the rest of society. CNN has my friend Scott Jennings on as the token House Republican. And it's not about understanding Scott. It's about Scott mocking Democrats and Democrats fighting back against Scott. We're a totally different model. And we think we can break the circuit and overcome the algorithm, even though our business model obviously involves using the algorithms to figure out how to grow. But we are about building authentic community and using technology to bring people together rather than divide.
Well, we wish you a lot of success in that, because Lord knows we need to change the public dialogue in our country. So now I'm going to come to the topic of platform responsibility and design, move away from the two polar ends. So Mahesh, you lead product at Kajabi, I understand, and you've written about delivering hard truths. So if you could sit down with leadership teams at the major kind of social media and AI platforms, what are the hard truths you would convey to them? And speak truth to power.
Well, I think we talked about the polarization that AI and social media is bringing to the table. I've actually had this conversation with the CEO. It's in the context of something different, which is about selling software to tobacco companies. And the answer, I'll never forget what he said, was as long as it is legal, we will continue to do it. And that is the truth for all companies right now. And there's only like a few ways you can change it, right? Like either make it illegal, which will be, I don't know if it's even possible. So quick segue, I promise it's relevant to this. So I recently became a citizen. So as part of becoming a US citizen, you have to give a test about the Constitution. So I was like, great, I'll now find out what it means to be an American. And the Constitution doesn't have any of those answers. It's a legal document, right? So what are our values as Americans? When you teach your kids like not to litter on the ground, like where did that come from, right? It's not written down anywhere. Same for companies. If you tell them these are the rules, you navigate inside those rules, they'll absolutely find the fastest path to like make money. So either you change it legally, or like I think somebody said, like this group, like citizens and people in the United States decide that, oh, this is unacceptable, we're not going to do this for our kids, and we make a conscious choice. Or companies and boards force this conversation with the leaders who run these companies and says, yeah, you have to have a backstop for all of this. Like, how do you know? You have to have research that shows whatever you're selling is not bad for your consumer, short-term, long-term, whatever. So problem is, I think we go in these cycles out, like tobacco took like 20, 30 years before we decided that it's bad for us, and it's still not illegal. It is still legal. So my prediction is, to your question specifically, like it doesn't matter what I tell CEOs, I think it'll have to go through its own, like people figuring out that this is like bad for us and like pushing back on it. Unless, there's like a visionary government like leader who puts a policy together, or like a visionary CEO who sets the bar. There are like good examples, like Patagonia's CEO, different way of running their board. There are like a bunch of like CEOs like that, but it is when you have market forces, when you have investors, when you have capitalism sort of defining the rules, companies will choose a specific way, and that is the unfortunate truth.
So this came up, I'm going a little off track a little bit, but this came up at an earlier panel I was attending. Has anyone read the Pope's encyclical on AI and the risks and dangers?
I had AI summarize it for me.
Well, I was just going to say, so I made that offhand remark. Well, I think the most depressing thing I saw on my LinkedIn feed today was somebody posting their analysis, which they've concluded that the encyclical was largely written by AI. So that's a really depressing thought. But anyway, don't need to go there. So this is a jump ball for anybody on the panel who wants to take it. So there's I think some sentiment that algorithmic transparency, so requiring giving users more information about what's driving, what's hitting their inbox and their feeds, is somehow going to reduce polarization and empower end users. Is that realistic, or is that overestimating the average user's attention span and intellect? Mike?
I'll say, in general, and not talking about anybody in this room, people are generally lazy. We're all busy. We're all distracted. We have a lot of stuff going on. So me telling you that I'm giving you more control is great, but you're not going to use it for the most part. We've seen this, Microsoft has seen this over the years, right? We have designed every single parameter changing thing you could ever imagine for the software that we provide, and so few people ever use it because we have very specific things to do. So it's a great thought to give everyone and large organizations and individuals more control, and I think we should do that. But I doubt, this is my take, I doubt that people will actually use it that much.
Back when I had my startup in 2022, I think, we were the first AI avatar company to actually put a disclosure from C2PA, if people are familiar with content credentials. It's, this kind of watermark embedded in a piece of content, visual content, and, including video. I was like, yes, we've always said that, we're built on transparency, and now people can see that this avatar is AI generated. So it was interesting because we'd initially just put a watermark on top before that technology existed, and clients, clients that are quite sort of conservative or traditional, legacy brands, they sort of yeah, that's nice to know that you do that. We trust you, but we don't want it on our content because it's going to interrupt the experience. And actually, in cases where the client was happy to have it on there, it did sort of interrupt the experience. And now the research is showing that when people see an AI, a label that a piece of content is AI, they actually sort of their perception of the quality of that content goes down and engagement goes down. So that's not the effect that you want. It's almost like it would be nice if it was just, and the other thing is the user interface hasn't been nailed yet, right? So you can kind of see that there might be AI in this, but you look at the labels and the labels aren't always populated. And so that just creates confusion or sort of like an error of what is this, as opposed to creating clarity. So I think fundamentally it is a noble idea, and trust needs to be built in layers. And again, I sort of operate mostly in the B2B space, but and back to avatars or AI twins, first of all, it's not just, is this actually an avatar of the CEO or not? That's less important as, do I actually trust this executive? Do I trust them to be using AI in a way that actually benefits me and the culture of this company? And then on other technical considerations might be am I logged in to my Slack and seeing this, right? That's more of a trust cue than getting a transparency marker. So I think it really depends on the context and also the intent behind it. So I think it's complex, but unfortunately transparency alone, physical transparency, isn't we're seeing enough.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Just to quickly add on, the teams that I build, everybody uses AI, but what my kind of guidance to the teams is, you have to know what good is before you use any of these tools. So you cannot just feed something into Claude or Copilot and whatever it spits back, you just take it and run with it. So we tend to hire senior people who know how to do things the hard way, and then so that you can sort of verify what AI is telling you. I think some similar concepts will apply to everything, right? I think we have to value human agency more than transparencies that companies can provide, because that will be of varying degrees of accuracy and relevance. So increasing human agency is the way to go, where everybody, when they see a piece of content, they go, okay, is there two sides to this, right? Automatically you think about it. When that happens, that's when we know that it's actually working. If you just trust, I don't trust companies to provide transparency in a uniform way, unless it is legally required for them to do it.
Okay. Any other takers?
I think this is a national crisis unlike anything we faced. And believe me, I'm super optimistic about the upsides, and I think it could be okay. But let me just do a quick survey of the room. Vote by show of hands. You can close your eyes if you're uncomfortable voting in front of the others. Raise your hand if you think you work hard enough to understand not only how to use AI in your personal life and in your professional life, but also the dangers of it to yourself and your family. Raise your hand if you think you're spending enough time on that. All right, and raise your hand if you don't think you're spending enough time on it. All right, not everybody voted, but this is a crisis, because I think the ones of you who said you are, some of you probably are, but most of you probably aren't. This is a challenge. I talk to people in Silicon Valley every day who work on this full time, and unless they spend 20 hours awake, which some of them do now, because this has taken over their lives because they recognize how big it is. It's very big to understand it, how to use it productively. And then, if I asked how many of you think about how to use it and how to consume it so that algorithms don't manipulate your life, I think anybody who won, one liar, everybody else telling the truth.
I have a strategy. I'll share it.
All right, that's awesome. He's an aberration. It's very difficult to not let it manipulate your life. And again, between the companies that are making money and the Chinese, there are lots of people out there trying to manipulate you. And somebody's going to have to train Americans. This is a group of elite Americans with the brain power and the time, for the most part, to do it. Most Americans have neither of those things.
Okay, this is another jump ball question. So thankfully, we're all here today in person, in a room with each other present. We're not like 6 faces up on a Zoom screen, and you're not 100 faces up on a Zoom screen. So we all were subject to way too much of that over the last 6 years. So there's this constant sort of tension around when is virtual okay, what circumstances demand the physical presence. So I would invite reflections from everyone on what is it about the actual physical interaction? What are the specific kinds of exchanges that really demand that kind of presence, and which are the ones you can let your avatar handle or just do it remotely?
I would say certainly anything that you would term creative, whether that's your team getting together, working on school projects, anything where you sort of thrive and you see an acceleration of great ideas coming because you are next to that person that you're talking to. You can look in their eyes. You feel the emotion in the room shift. You know when someone's uncomfortable. It's, even though all of our video technologies have advanced a lot, it's hard to pick up on that sort of feeling that you get when you're in person. So, and we've documented this. Lots of people have done the research. During the pandemic, we increased personal productivity, but we lost group creativity. And so we're still facing that. So any opportunity you have to be in person with your teams, with your family, with your friends, take it. Because you're going to get so much more out of being there in person and feeling what it's like to interact with people.
Actually, it's going to reference something that Devin said earlier, that you're seeing businesses invest more in being social, like gathering people in person and all of that. And I think there's a few things. In one of my projects, I actually run an event series. And so I can see the pull and what actually happens in the room when you bring people together. And so I think one thing is, to be creative, you need to come up with ideas that aren't already in the training data, right? So the minute you get out of the LLMs, off the screens, you're in person with other human beings. That's an opportunity to be creative in a way that is actually almost by definition not predictable, right? Like the next token. So I think that creativity has to happen in these, in-person environments. And it's kind of funny because after COVID, I was sort of like, is there any point going to that event? Is there blah, blah, blah? You forget the value. But then when I started going to events again, I was like, oh my goodness, that was so worthwhile. And it was the difference between being not with people and being with people because of that transition was very clear. I think the other thing is there is this uncanniness in our feeds, right? So like, we feel this was written by AI, it probably was written by AI, and maybe if it was assisted by AI, that's okay, but hopefully there's like an idea worth, paying attention to underneath, but that's in question. So uncanniness isn't just like, is this a real person or an avatar? It's like literally all the content that we see online. And so I think as trust sort of deteriorates or the quality deteriorates in our feeds, again, sort of that puts extra value on that in-person experience.
Just to quickly add on to, completely agree with what everybody is saying. The one thing I've noticed with the teams that I've built is if you're fresh out of school, first job, do not take a remote job. Try to take a job where you can go to the office, meet with people, talk to your teammates, brainstorm, debate, disagree, discuss. And I think Stripe did a large-scale study on this too, and they've noticed the same thing. Experienced people, when they go remote, I think it works out for them. They're like as productive as they were when they are in person. But if you're new to the workforce, my recommendation is to take an in-person job where you can talk to the people all day, every day. All my leadership conversations are in person. I tell every Zoom meeting has a propensity to become a status meeting at some point. So if you really want to, I think to Mike's point, you want to brainstorm something creative, you want to problem solve, I think in-person is the way to go, especially for younger folks, fresh grads. Seek out that in-person job is what I would say.
I couldn't agree more on that. I'm going to double down on this. I think that the pandemic changed us all. I think in some way, shape, or form, I know I can speak for myself, it totally shifted my life and opened my eyes in so many different ways. I think that, there are stats flying around out there about this loneliness epidemic. And I think no doubt a lot of this comes from the fact that we were in our homes in front of our screens, so many of us, for years on end. And this desire for human connection, well, I feel like it's essential to our sort of human beingness, but now needed more than ever. So you're seeing businesses starting to double down on this, but outside of the business sort of capitalist world, I think as humans, we are craving that human connection. I hosted an event last week in Boston at the De Cordoba Museum for Second Harvest, and it was mostly in that room venture capitalists, CEOs, operators, people who have built successful businesses and who, if you look at them on paper, they look like they've got it all together. But you actually start having conversations with them and peeling back the onion, and once they can take down the facade, they're lonely. They're hurting. They're trying to figure out what the hell, what to do with themselves. So I think this need for in-person connection is more important now than ever.
Yeah, and I'm going to chime with two things. Then we will open it up for questions or comments, and the comments will be brief comments, but because we're going to run out of time. One other, I agree with all this. One other thing, though, and Mahesh, if you want to run with this, I'm happy to cede the floor to you. I think in-person delivering bad news is critical. So I ran a practice group for 12 years that grew from 100 people to 600 people. And twice a year, I had to break news to associates who wanted promotions, didn't get them, or partners who wanted bonuses and weren't going to get them. And those were really hard discussions. And the thought of doing that virtually was bad. Even doing it by phone was bad. So I would literally have to fly around the country to our offices to sit down with people face to face. I think they're just where you need to establish an emotional connection and let someone know you really care. It's just infinitely more powerful to do it in person.
You can let your AI twin have the bad conversation.
Yeah. But on this whole topic of connectedness and alienation and the impact of technology, who here knows who Vivek Murthy is? A bunch of people. Okay, so Vivek Murthy is a Harvard College alum and a Yale Med School and Yale SOM alum who served twice as the U.S. Surgeon General, once under President Obama, once under President Biden. And he wrote a book called Together, and it's very much about maintaining and strengthening societal connections. And he's just launched a blog on this topic. And I'm on his LinkedIn thing. I read it. Everything he puts out I find very powerful and really comforting in a time when there's a lot of reason to be worried. So I would say anybody who hasn't found Vivek Murthy should go find him. Okay, so we have about 7 minutes left. Any questions from the crowd or comments? Somebody had a comment earlier. Not one? Not one.
So we've talked a lot.
Okay.
Can I go?
Fire away.
Okay, cool. So we've talked a lot about potentially the dangers of AI, countries getting involved, and how people are sort of lacking these critical thinking skills to navigate this on their own. And so I guess what I'm asking is what substantive, I don't sleep enough, policy can be passed to make sure that Americans are getting those critical thinking skills and that we are setting people up for the tools that they need to succeed in this new era of AI. So if you could pass one policy today, what would it be?
So I'll start with one, and I'll let everyone jump in. So anyone here who's never been to Estonia, I'd put it very high on your list of interesting places to travel. It's a country that has a very interesting history and a great determination to never again be under the jackboot of the Russian state. When the Soviets left in the early 90s, the country it's a small place, so they literally got together and said, okay, we're not going to let one kleptocracy be replaced by another. And so the way we're going to avoid that is to have radical transparency in everything we do. And the way to do that is to have everything digitized. So they've been voting on the internet for 15 years. Everything in Estonia is digitized. They also are the subject of all kinds of disinformation campaigns coming out of Russia, just massive amounts of propaganda. So in Estonia, school children as young as kindergarten are trained in how to react to, understand what disinformation is and understand what it is to manipulate and understand how important it is to be a thinker and not just a passive recipient of data. So I think a lot of it starts in schools, and that's going to take a long time to solve. We have a lot of other challenges in our schools, but I think until we start really training people aggressively and proactively to be engaged citizens, and not just talk about it at like Memorial Day ceremonies, but actually build it into the curriculum, we're going to have some road to go.
Just a really quick one. I think that having debates, right? So like setting people up from early childhood, like have a debate in person, feeding off each other, live conversation, no opportunity to cheat, do your research, use LLMs to help you. But in the end, it's you pitted against another human being in real life. So I think bringing that back.
You're asking the exact right question. And I've talked to governors about it, members of Congress, members of the Trump administration, heads of the biggest tech platform, social media platforms, and people in AI. And I don't think anybody's going to do it. So I hate to sound self-involved, but the biggest thing we could do is somebody could fund the show I want to do, which I'm planning right now, which is a nightly show. It's 1 hour, 5 days a week. We bring on the leading figures in AI who explain things, but we guide them through explaining in a simple way. We give you a newscast about the latest developments in AI. We give you 3 things you can read, and then you can ask questions. We need a national daily conversation about it that everybody can join. So that's what I'm trying to do. So if anybody wants to fund the show, it won't be very expensive. I already have a great co-host and looking forward to doing it. But we need a national conversation, and none of the people I've asked, I've begged Meta to do it. I begged the consortium of the AI companies to do it. I've asked members of Congress. Nobody wants to do it because it's hard.
Okay, one more over here, and then we're going to do final words.
Thank you so much for being here and for the meaningful insights you've shared. My question relates to what you mentioned repeatedly about building trust. And you mentioned building trust from the employee side to understand that, like their CEO are using tools to create these avatars, those the digital twins. But I'm just wondering, flipping the question, like how do you build trust on the CEO side, on the executive side, on the supervising people, to use these avatars to represent themselves in front of others, given like cybersecurity concern, legal representation, and things about like everything is traced online versus in-person conversations. I mean, there are some things that remain behind the doors.
Yeah, thank you for the important question. So first of all, it takes a leader that sees the potential in this technology, right? So for me, it's always like, I was involved in, I don't know if anyone saw the Reid Hoffman AI twin that was very popular and probably still is on social. So my company built that avatar. And then every executive wanted one. Okay. And so it was like, okay, but then it sort of fell a bit flat because there was no purpose behind it. With Reid Hoffman's AI twin, he had a creative idea for it, right? Like have a conversation with his past self or, have a debate about the future of AI. There was a reason for it. So first of all, it's like, and I think that was the ultimate proof of concept, right? It was still a proof of concept. It's like, this is what the technology can do. You couldn't actually interact with it. So we're now in the phase where in the right settings and for the right reasons, you can develop such a thing, but it needs to have a purpose and a narrow scope and a way to actually measure the impact. So to this healthcare CEO who approached me, having seen the Reid Hoffman twin, I said, well, you want to make a vanity twin or a strategic twin? And he said strategic twin because no one's going to say vanity. But not every project follows through, but this one did. And it was like, okay, so what gap are you trying to solve? And a big gap in the company is around communication. And it's like, okay, so where is this most needed? And it was in the onboarding space. The company was acquiring other companies. Like, how do you give new hires a direct line sort of communication and information, not just stuff they need to know, like the company handbook, but also to get insight into the culture and the leadership in the company. So that is the first use for it. The twin is trained on what it